Before we begin, I want you to think about something. Just one sentence, one careless sentence. Have you ever said something you wish you could take back? Something that left your mouth in a moment, but stayed in someone else's heart forever? Because tonight's story is not just a story, it's a mirror. And by the end of it, you may never speak the same way again. The night was unusually quiet in the small town of Ashford, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like something is waiting to happen. Daniel Mercer stood outside his house staring into the darkness, his hands trembling, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something he didn't fully understand yet. Just hours earlier, everything had been normal. Normal, until his words changed everything. Daniel was known in Ashford, not as a criminal, not as a villain, but as a man with a sharp tongue. People laughed at his jokes, yes, but they also feared his words, because Daniel didn't just speak, he cut. Every sentence carried an edge. Every remark had a hidden blade. And the strange thing is, he never thought it mattered. Words are just words, he would say with a smirk. If people get hurt, that's their weakness. But here's the thing, words are never just words. And Daniel was about to learn that in a way he could never forget. That afternoon, the town gathered at the small church at the corner of Maple Street. It wasn't a special occasion, just a weekly gathering. But something felt different that day. The air was thick with something unspoken. Inside, the pastor spoke gently about the power of the tongue, referencing teachings from the Bible. He spoke about how a single spark can set a forest on fire, how a tongue, though small, can destroy lives. Daniel sat in the back, barely listening. He leaned toward his friend and whispered a sarcastic remark about the sermon, causing a few quiet chuckles. But in front of him sat a young woman named Clara. Clara wasn't like the others. She was quiet, kind, the kind of person who smiled even when life gave her reasons not to. But she had been struggling. Her father had recently passed away, and she carried her grief silently. And Daniel didn't know that. After the service, people gathered outside, talking, laughing, living their ordinary lives. Clara stood alone near the steps, holding a small notebook. Daniel noticed her, and that's when it happened. With a careless grin, he walked up and said loudly enough for others to hear, "Still pretending to be strong, Clara? Or is that just for sympathy?" There was a silence, a deep, uncomfortable silence. Clara's smile faded. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, like a candle being blown out. And she said nothing. That was the moment. The moment Daniel's words stopped being just words and became something else. Something heavier. Something irreversible. Later that evening, the town felt different. Conversations were quieter. Eyes avoided Daniel, but he brushed it off. "People are too sensitive," he muttered. But then came the knock on his door. Slow, heavy, intentional. When Daniel opened it, he saw the pastor. There was no anger in his eyes, no judgment, just sorrow. "Daniel," he said softly, "Clara left town tonight." Daniel frowned. "So? People leave all the time." The pastor paused. Then he said something Daniel would never forget. "She didn't just leave the town, she left hope behind." Those words didn't hit immediately, but they lingered. And later that night, as silence wrapped around the town, Daniel began to feel something unfamiliar. Guilt. But it wasn't loud. It crept in slowly, like a whisper in the dark. He tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Clara's face. That fading smile, that quiet breaking. And then something strange happened. He heard a voice, not from outside, not from the room, but from within. Your words did that. He sat up, breathing heavily. No, it was just a joke, he said to himself. But the voice returned. Was it? That night became the longest night of Daniel's life. Memories began to flood in. Every sarcastic remark, every insult disguised as humor, every moment he had dismissed someone's pain. And suddenly he saw it, not as separate moments, but as a trail of hurt, a trail of broken spirits, a trail he had created, one word at a time. By morning, Daniel was not the same man. But here's the truth. Realization doesn't erase consequences. And consequences were already in motion. Days passed. Clara did not return. The town felt colder, quieter, emptier. And Daniel became isolated, not because people hated him, but because they feared him, because they had finally seen what his words could do. One afternoon, Daniel walked into the church alone. He sat in silence. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. And in that silence, he whispered a prayer. Not polished, not perfect, just real. God, if you're listening, I didn't know, I didn't understand, but I do now. Please, teach me how to speak again. And something changed. Not instantly, but deeply. Because true transformation doesn't start with words. It starts with surrender. Daniel began to listen more, speak less, think before every sentence. And slowly, people noticed. But healing takes time, and some wounds never fully disappear. Weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address, just a name written on the front. Daniel opened it with trembling hands. It was from Clara. Her words were simple. I forgive you. That was all. No anger, no explanation, just forgiveness. And in that moment, Daniel broke. Not from guilt, but from grace. Because forgiveness is something words can never fully explain. From that day on, Daniel changed his life. Not dramatically, not loudly, but faithfully. He became known for something new. Not sharpness, but kindness. Not sarcasm, but encouragement. And when people asked him what changed, he would say quietly, I learned that the tongue can either destroy a life or restore one. And now, let me ask you something. Right now, in this moment, what kind of words are you carrying? Are they healing or hurting? Are they building or breaking? Because every word you speak is planting something in someone's heart, and one day it will grow. The question is, what will it become? Daniel thought the story had ended when Clara smiled, but life rarely ends where we think it does. It was a quiet evening when he returned to Ashford, the sky painted in deep shades of orange and fading gold. The town looked the same narrow streets, the same old church standing at the corner, but something within him had shifted so deeply that even the familiar felt new. And yet beneath that peace, there was still a question lingering in his heart. Because transformation is not proven in moments of realization. It is proven in moments of pressure. Days passed, and Daniel continued to live differently. He spoke gently, listened more, and chose silence when his old instincts tried to return. People noticed. Slowly, conversations with him became easier, lighter. safer. But just as life began to settle, something unexpected happened. One afternoon during a small gathering in town, a man named Victor arrived. He was known for his bold opinions and even sharper tongue than Daniel had once had. He laughed loudly, spoke harshly, and mocked others openly, just as Daniel once did. And then, it happened again. Victor turned toward a young boy standing nearby and said something cruel. The words were casual, almost playful, but they landed heavily. The boy's smile disappeared instantly. Daniel saw it, not just with his eyes, but with his memory. For a brief moment, time folded back on itself. He saw Clara again. He felt that same silence, that same invisible damage. And something inside him stirred. This time he had a choice: to stay silent or to speak, but not with sharpness, not with anger, with truth. Daniel stepped forward slowly. His voice was calm but firm. "Words like that stay longer than you think," he said. Victor laughed. "Oh, really? Since when did people become so fragile?" Daniel didn't react with anger. He simply looked at him and said quietly, "Since always, we just didn't notice." There was a pause, not dramatic, but real. And in that moment, something unusual happened. Victor didn't respond immediately. Because truth, when spoken with grace, doesn't attack. It reveals. The gathering grew quiet, not out of tension, but out of awareness. Something had shifted again. Not loudly, not forcefully, but deeply. That evening, Daniel sat alone once more, reflecting on what had happened, and for the first time, he understood something greater than his own story. The power of the tongue doesn't disappear when we change. It multiplies. Because now, it can protect. It can guide. It can stop harm before it spreads. He remembered a teaching from the Bible, that life and death are in the power of the tongue, and suddenly that truth felt more real than ever before. Not as a verse, but as a lived reality. Weeks later, the young boy Daniel had defended approached him. His voice was quiet, but sincere. "Thank you," he said. Daniel looked at him gently. "For what?" "For speaking when I couldn't." Those words stayed with him. Because sometimes the greatest use of our voice is not to express ourselves, but to stand for someone else. And slowly Ashford began to change again. Conversations softened. People became more mindful. Not perfect, but aware. And Victor? He didn't transform overnight, but something in him had been planted. Because even the hardest hearts are not immune to truth spoken in love. Years passed and Daniel grew older. His hair turned gray, his steps slower, but his words remained steady, intentional, filled with quiet strength. And one evening, as he sat outside watching the sun disappear beyond the horizon, a thought came to him, simple yet profound. A lifetime is not measured by what we say, but by what remains after we speak. The echoes, the impact, and the unseen marks we leave on the hearts of others. And as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Daniel whispered softly, almost as if speaking to his past self, "If I had known, I would have chosen differently sooner." But then he smiled. Because regret, when met with grace, becomes purpose, and purpose becomes legacy. So now, the story is not just Daniel's, it is yours. Because every conversation you have, every word you release, is writing something in someone's life. Something that may last far longer than you ever intended. So pause, just for a moment. Think about the last thing you said to someone. Did it lift them or weigh them down? Did it heal or leave a mark? Because one day, just like Daniel, you may look back and realize the most powerful thing you ever held was never in your hands. It was in your words. And the question that remains is the same. What will you choose to do with them? The question lingered long after the sun had set, stretching far beyond the quiet streets of Ashford and into the world we live in today. Because the truth is, our world is no longer shaped only by spoken words whispered in small towns or shared in close gatherings. It is shaped by constant noise, by opinions, reactions, comments, and messages that travel faster than thought itself. The tongue has not lost its power. It has only found new forms. It now lives behind screens, hidden in text, carried through posts and replies that can reach thousands in seconds. And just like Daniel once believed, many still think words are harmless, temporary, easily forgotten. But they are not. Not then, and certainly not now. If Daniel had lived in this time, his sharp tongue might not have been heard in a crowd, but seen on a screen. A single sarcastic comment, typed in a moment of carelessness, could spread far beyond one person. It could be shared, repeated, and remembered long after he had moved on. And just like Clara, someone on the other side might read those words in silence, their smile fading where no one else could see. This is the world we live in, a world where words travel farther, stay longer, and cut deeper. And yet we often pause less before we use them. Every day, people are lifted or broken, not by actions, but by sentences. A careless joke, a harsh reply, a thoughtless opinion. These are the modern echoes of the same sharp tongue Daniel once carried. And sometimes the most painful part is not the words themselves, but the silence that follows. The silence of those who see harm but say nothing. The silence of those who know better but choose comfort over courage. In those moments, we are no longer just witnesses. We become part of the story. The teachings of Jesus Christ remind us that what comes from the mouth flows from the heart, and that truth has not changed with time. Whether spoken aloud or typed in a message, words still carry the same power to give life or cause harm. And in today's world, that power is magnified. One kind sentence can reach someone at their lowest and lift them. One word of encouragement can restore hope where it was almost gone. Just as harm spreads, so does kindness, but only if someone chooses to begin it. Look closely at the world around you, and you will see people carrying more than they reveal. Behind every smile may be a struggle, behind every post a hidden pain, behind every silence a story untold. And in such a world, words matter more than ever. What we say, or choose not to say, can shape someone's day, their confidence, even their direction in life. The smallest sentence can become a turning point. And so the story of Daniel is no longer just his own. It becomes a reflection of us all. Every conversation we have, every response we give, every word we release is planting something in someone else's heart. These are seeds, invisible at first, but powerful over time. Some grow into healing, encouragement, and strength. Others grow into doubt, hurt, and silence. And once planted, they cannot simply be taken back. In this fast-moving world, it is easy to forget the weight of what we say. It is easy to react instead of reflect, to speak instead of pause. But wisdom asks us to slow down, to consider, to choose our words with intention. Because one day, like Daniel, we may look back and realize that the most powerful thing we ever held was never in our hands, but in our words. And when that moment comes, the question will remain the same, simple yet profound. Not how much we spoke, but what remained after we did. Not how many opinions we shared, but how many hearts we touched. Not how loud our voice was, but how deeply it was felt. So in this world filled with endless noise, choose to be different. Choose to speak with purpose, with kindness, with truth. Let your words reflect a heart that understands their power. Because every word you speak or write today is shaping something that will outlast the moment. And the question that quietly follows you into every conversation is this: what are your words leaving behind? And that question does not fade quickly. It lingers in the quiet moments, when the screen goes dark, when the conversation ends, when the noise of the world settles just enough for us to hear our own thoughts again. It follows us into our routines, into our relationships, into the spaces where our words are no longer visible, but their effects still remain. Because the truth is, words do not disappear. They settle, they echo, they take root in places we may never see. In today's world, the reach of our words has expanded, but so has the distance between us and the consequences of them. We can say something without seeing the reaction. We can post something without witnessing the silence it creates on the other side. And because we do not see the immediate impact, we begin to believe there is none. But that is where the danger quietly grows. The absence of visible pain does not mean the absence of real hurt. In fact, some of the deepest wounds are the ones carried in silence, where no one else is present to notice. There are people who replay sentences in their minds long after they were spoken or written. Words spoken in passing become permanent in memory. A single careless phrase can turn into a voice inside someone's head, repeating itself in moments of weakness, shaping how they see themselves. And often the one who spoke those words has already moved on, unaware that something so small to them has become something so heavy to someone else. This is the unseen weight of the tongue, the quiet influence that extends far beyond intention. And yet, in the same way, there are words that become anchors, words that steady a person when everything else feels uncertain. A kind sentence spoken at the right moment can interrupt a spiral of doubt. A simple "you matter" can reach deeper than we realize. Encouragement, when it is genuine, has a way of staying with people, returning to them in times when they need it most. These words do not just pass through, they remain, shaping thoughts, restoring strength, reminding people of their worth. This is why awareness becomes so important. Not fear of speaking, but understanding the responsibility that comes with it. Every interaction becomes an opportunity, whether small or significant. A brief exchange with a stranger, a message to a friend, a comment left online. Each one carries potential. We are constantly, often without realizing it, influencing the emotional and spiritual landscape of those around us. And the more connected the world becomes, the more far-reaching that influence is. The teachings found in the Bible continue to speak into this reality with timeless clarity. They remind us that the tongue, though small, directs the course of life much like a rudder guides a ship. That image becomes even more powerful today, when a single sentence can steer not just one life, but many. It challenges us to consider not just what we say, but why we say it. What is driving our words? What is shaping our tone? What is filling our hearts before anything ever reaches our lips or our fingertips? Because ultimately, words are not isolated. They are reflections. They reveal what is within us. If there is impatience, it will show. If there is pride, it will surface. If there is compassion, it will be felt. And this realization invites something deeper than simply choosing better words. It calls for a transformed heart, a heart that is slow to anger, quick to listen, and intentional in speech. A heart that seeks not to win conversations, but to build people. In a culture that often rewards quick responses and sharp opinions, choosing gentleness can feel unnatural. It can even feel weak. But in reality, it requires far greater strength to pause, to reflect, and to respond with care. It requires discipline to hold back a harsh word, to replace sarcasm with sincerity, to choose understanding over reaction. And over time, these choices begin to shape not only others, but ourselves. The way we speak begins to redefine the way we think, the way we see people, the way we experience the world. There is also something profoundly powerful about consistency in this transformation. Not just moments of kindness, but a pattern of it. Not just occasional encouragement, but a habit of it. Because people begin to trust what is consistent. They begin to feel safe around those whose words are steady and sincere. And in a world where many feel uncertain and guarded, that sense of safety becomes a rare and valuable gift. And still, there will be moments of failure, moments when words come out too quickly, when emotions take over, when old patterns try to return. But even in those moments, there is an opportunity, not to ignore the mistake, but to acknowledge it, to correct it, to grow from it. Just as Daniel learned, change is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about continually choosing to move toward truth, toward grace, toward a better way of speaking and living. As time moves forward, the accumulation of our words begins to form a kind of legacy, not one written in records or achievements, but one carried in the memories of others. People may forget exact conversations, but they remember how they felt. They remember whether they were uplifted or diminished, encouraged or dismissed. And those impressions formed through repeated moments become the story of who we were in their lives. So the invitation remains open in every moment, in every interaction, to become more aware, more intentional, more aligned with the kind of words that bring life rather than take it away. To recognize that even the smallest sentence can carry lasting significance. And to understand that in a world filled with constant expression, the most powerful voices are not always the loudest, but the ones that speak with wisdom, compassion, and truth. And as you move forward from this moment into your conversations, your messages, your daily exchanges, carry this awareness with you. Let it shape the way you respond, the way you express, the way you connect, because your words are already at work, already planting, already influencing. The only thing left to decide is what they will continue to grow into and what kind of impact they will leave behind in the lives they touch. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause, even for a moment, then don't ignore that feeling. That's not coincidence. That's conviction. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to change the way we speak, because words can lead people away from light or bring them closer to God. Just like the teachings of Jesus Christ remind us, what comes out of our mouths reflects what lives in our hearts. And tonight, you have a choice, a powerful, life-changing choice. To speak life, to speak truth, to speak love. If this message meant something to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to the channel Parables of Hope, because your support helps us continue sharing stories that heal, inspire, and bring people closer to God. And listen, we truly mean this. Your one click, your one share could change someone's life. So be part of that change. Stay with us. Watch more stories on Parables of Hope. And together, let's spread truth across the world. Because in a world full of noise, we need more voices that speak hope. And remember, before you speak, ask yourself, will these words heal or will they haunt?